The text came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office. Need to talk. It's about the company, please. From Nathan, my brother, the man who'd stolen 15 years of my life. I stared at the message, a bitter smile playing at my lips. The great Nathan Pierce, golden boy of Pierce Industries, was asking for my help. The irony wasn't lost on me. My name is Michael Pierce, and 15 years ago, I was the CFO of Pierce Industries, our family's manufacturing company. Dad had built it from nothing, turning a small factory into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Nathan and I were supposed to inherit it together. At least that was what Dad had planned before he died. I still remember that day in the boardroom, just 3 months after Dad's funeral. I was reviewing the quarterly financials when the police walked in. They had evidence, they said, of massive fraud, forged documents, falsified records, millions siphoned into offshore accounts, all traced back to me. I knew immediately who was behind it. Nathan had always been jealous of my close relationship with Dad, of how naturally business came to me. While I spent weekends learning the company's operations, he was out partying, burning through his trust fund. But he was clever. I had to give him that. He'd spent months setting me up, fabricating evidence, laying the groundwork for my downfall. The trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming, all perfectly crafted to point to me. Nathan testified against me, his performance Oscar-worthy as he described his shock and disappointment at discovering his own brother's betrayal. I watched from the defendant's table as he shed tears for the jury, describing how I'd betrayed not just the company, but our father's legacy. The jury took less than 2 days to convict me. 15 years for fraud and embezzlement. As they led me away in handcuffs, Nathan caught my eye and had the audacity to look sad, like this was somehow hurting him more than me. Prison changes you. The first year, I was angry. At Nathan, at the justice system, at myself for not seeing it coming. But then something shifted. I started thinking clearly for the first time. If I wanted revenge, real revenge, I needed to be smarter than Nathan. I needed to play the long game. So I studied. I took every business course available through the prison education program. I read everything I could get my hands on about corporate law, modern manufacturing, emerging technologies. I made connections with other inmates, learning from their mistakes and their successes. Most importantly, I started planning. What Nathan didn't know was that I wasn't completely alone. Maria, my old assistant at Pierce Industries, never believed I was guilty. She visited me regularly, keeping me updated on the company's operations. Through her, I learned how Nathan was running our father's legacy into the ground. He's making terrible decisions, Michael, she told me during one visit. He's ignoring maintenance on the manufacturing equipment, taking out high-interest loans to cover his personal expenses. The board is getting nervous. I listened, taking mental notes of every mistake, every weakness. Nathan was doing exactly what I expected, treating the company like his personal piggy bank, just like he'd done with his trust fund. When I was released 3 months ago, I didn't immediately contact Nathan. Instead, I reached out to old industry contacts, calling in favors, gathering intelligence. I learned that Pierce Industries was in trouble, big trouble. Nathan had borrowed heavily against the company's assets. The equipment was outdated, and their market share was shrinking. I also discovered something Nathan didn't know. Dad had set up a small, separate corporation in my name before he died. It wasn't worth much then, just a few patents and some real estate. But over the 15 years I was away, managed by a trusted family friend, it had grown. Now it was worth more than Pierce Industries. I moved quietly, building relationships with Pierce Industries' biggest clients, learning about their dissatisfaction with Nathan's leadership. I hired away key employees who were fed up with his mismanagement, all while staying in the shadows, letting Nathan dig himself deeper into trouble. Now, sitting in my office at MP Enterprises, my new company, I read his text again. Nathan Pierce, the brother who'd sent me to prison, was asking for help. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I typed back, "Coffee tomorrow? 10 a.m. at Carlton's." His response was immediate, "Yes, thank you, I'll be there." I set down my phone, looking out over the city skyline. Carlton's was where Dad used to take us for breakfast when we were kids, where he taught us about business and responsibility. Nathan probably thought choosing that location would appeal to my sentimentality. What he didn't know was that I'd chosen it for a different reason. Carlton's was where Dad had first told us about his succession plan. both of us running the company together, building on his legacy. It seemed fitting that it would also be where I started dismantling everything Nathan had stolen. Maria knocked on my office door, interrupting my thoughts. "The lawyer sent over the documents you requested," she said, placing a thick folder on my desk. "Everything's ready whenever you want to move forward." I nodded, thinking about the meeting tomorrow. Nathan texted. He wants to talk about the company. Maria's expression hardened. She'd never forgiven Nathan for what he'd done to me. "Are you sure about this, Michael? After everything he did?" "I'm sure," I said, opening the folder. Inside were documents showing just how close Pierce Industries was to collapse. Reports on failing equipment, unhappy clients, mounting debt. Nathan had done exactly what I predicted. He'd destroyed everything Dad had built. 15 years is a long time to plan something, I continued, a small smile playing at my lips. "Trust me, I know exactly what I'm doing." I closed the folder and stood up, walking to the window. The Pierce Industries building was visible in the distance, its once proud logo now faded and worn. Tomorrow I would sit across from Nathan and listen to him beg for help. And then I would begin the endgame I'd been planning for 15 years. Dad always said revenge was a poor business strategy. But then again, Dad never spent 15 years in prison because of his own brother's betrayal. Carlton's hadn't changed much in 15 years. The same dark wood paneling, the same leather booths, even the same elderly waitress, Margaret, who'd served us countless times during those breakfast meetings with Dad. I arrived early, choosing the corner booth where we used to sit. Margaret recognized me immediately, her eyes widening in surprise. "Michael Pierce," she said, setting down a cup of black coffee. She still remembered how I took it. "It's been a long time." I smiled. "Too long, Margaret. How's the chocolate chip pancakes these days?" "Still your father's recipe," she replied, her eyes softening. "Nathan comes in sometimes, but it's not the same." No, I thought it wouldn't be. Nathan never understood the value of tradition, of relationships built over decades of Saturday morning breakfasts and business lessons. At exactly 10 a.m., Nathan walked in. He looked older than I remembered, his designer suit hanging slightly loose on his frame, dark circles under his eyes. Success, it seemed, hadn't been kind to him. "Michael," he said, sliding into the booth. His voice wavered slightly. "Thank you for meeting me." I took a sip of coffee, studying him over the rim of my cup. "You said it was about the company." He ran a hand through his graying hair, the gesture reminding me so much of Dad it almost hurt. "Yes. Look, I know things between us are complicated." Complicated. I let out a short laugh. That's an interesting way to describe framing your brother for fraud and sending him to prison for 15 years. Nathan flinched but pressed on. "I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But right now, I need your help. The company, Dad's company, it's in trouble." "I know," I said calmly. His eyes snapped up to meet mine. "Did you think I wouldn't keep track of things while I was away?" "How much do you know?" "Everything, Nathan. The neglected equipment maintenance, the high interest loans, the declining market share. You've run Dad's legacy into the ground." He slumped in his seat. "The board is threatening to remove me. Our biggest client, Maxwell Manufacturing, is threatening to pull their contract. If that happens," he trailed off. But I knew what he wasn't saying. If Maxwell pulled out, Pierce Industries would collapse. "And what exactly do you expect me to do about it?" "I heard about your new company," he said. "MP Enterprises. You've been doing well for yourself." I smiled. Of course he'd looked into my business. "Very well. The board, they remember you. They remember how you used to run things. If you came back, took over the financial side again." He paused, swallowing hard. "We could be partners like Dad always wanted." The sheer audacity of his proposal almost made me laugh. Instead, I leaned forward. "Partners? Like we were supposed to be before you sent me to prison?" "I was young," he said quickly, "stupid and jealous. Dad always favored you." "Dad favored hard work and competence," I cut him off. "Something you never understood." Margaret appeared with Nathan's coffee, giving us a moment's reprieve from the tension. After she left, Nathan spoke again, his voice quieter. "What do you want, Michael? Name your price. The company needs you." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through some documents before sliding it across the table. "These are the current financials for Pierce Industries. Your debt-to-equity ratio is dangerously high." Equipment failure rates are up 300% from last year. Employee turnover is at an all-time high. Nathan stared at the screen, his face paling. How did you get these? I have my sources, I said, taking my phone back. The question isn't what I want, Nathan. The question is, what are you willing to give up to save Dad's company? Anything, he said immediately, whatever it takes. I nodded slowly, as if considering his words. All right, here's what's going to happen. I'll help you save Pierce Industries. Relief flooded his face. Thank you, Michael. You won't regret. I'm not finished, I interrupted. I'll help on 2 conditions. First, you step down as CEO, effective immediately. Second, you transfer your controlling shares to me. The color drained from his face. You want me to give you control of the company? Think of it as restitution, I said, my voice hardening. For the 15 years you stole from me. The board would never approve. The board will approve anything that saves them from bankruptcy, I countered, which is exactly what they're facing if Maxwell Manufacturing pulls their contract. Nathan's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee. And if I refuse? I stood up, dropping some bills on the table for the coffee. Then Pierce Industries goes under, and Dad's legacy dies with it. Your choice, brother. As I walked toward the door, Nathan called out, Wait, I need time to think about it. I turned back, giving him a cold smile. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, my offer expires. Leaving him sitting there, looking broken in our father's favorite booth, I felt a mix of satisfaction and something else. Not quite pity, but perhaps understanding. Nathan had always been driven by fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of failing to measure up to Dad's expectations. Now that fear had finally caught up with him. Back at my office, Maria was waiting with an update. Maxwell Manufacturing called. They're ready to move forward whenever you give the word. I nodded, settling behind my desk. What Nathan didn't know was that I'd already met with Maxwell's CEO weeks ago. They weren't just threatening to pull their contract, they were planning to sign with MP Enterprises instead. All I needed was Nathan's answer to set everything in motion. Do you think he'll accept your terms? Maria asked. He doesn't have a choice, I replied, opening my laptop. Nathan's finally learning what I learned in prison. Sometimes your only option is to surrender. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. I'll do it. Whatever you want. Just help me save the company. I showed the message to Maria, who smiled grimly. Should I tell the lawyers to prepare the paperwork? Yes, I said, thinking about tomorrow. It's time for the prodigal son to come home. The next morning, Pierce Industries' boardroom was filled with tension. Nathan sat at one end of the long mahogany table, looking like he hadn't slept. The board members occupied their usual seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. They'd been summoned for an emergency meeting, but only Nathan knew why. I walked in exactly on time, Maria following with a stack of documents. The board members' reactions to my appearance ranged from shock to disbelief. Most of them had testified against me at my trial. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan began, his voice rough. I've called this meeting to discuss the future of Pierce Industries. For the next hour, I laid out the company's situation in brutal detail. The equipment failures, the mounting debt, the imminent loss of Maxwell Manufacturing. The board members' faces grew increasingly grim as they realized just how close to collapse their company was. This is unacceptable, Charles Bennett, the longest-serving board member, growled. Why weren't we informed of the severity of these issues? Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but I cut in. Because Nathan hoped he could fix things before they got this far. But now we're here, and you have a choice to make. I nodded to Maria, who distributed folders to each board member. Inside, you'll find my proposal for saving Pierce Industries. The key points are simple. I take over as CEO with full control of operations. Nathan transfers his controlling shares to me, stepping down to an advisory role. The room erupted in murmurs. Charles Bennett spoke up again. And why should we trust you, Michael? After what happened? After I was framed. I interrupted, my voice sharp. Several board members flinched. Let's be clear about something. 15 years ago, you all sat in this room and believed lies about me. Now you're sitting here watching the company my father built crumble under my brother's leadership. I opened my laptop, projecting figures onto the screen. These are MP Enterprises' current financials. My company's profit margins are triple what Pierce Industries were in its best years. Our employee satisfaction rates are among the highest in the industry. And I paused for effect. We've just secured a contract with Maxwell Manufacturing. Unless, of course, Pierce Industries accepts my proposal. The implications hit them like a thunderbolt. Without Maxwell's contract, Pierce Industries would fail within months. They knew it, I knew it, and most importantly, Nathan knew it. The choice is yours, I continued. But understand this, either Pierce Industries moves forward under my leadership, or it doesn't move forward at all. The vote was unanimous. 2 hours later, I sat in what had once been my father's office, and would be again. Nathan stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline. You planned this, he said quietly. All of it. Maxwell Manufacturing, the timing, how long? 15 years, I replied, not bothering to deny it. I had a lot of time to think in prison. He turned to face me, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the brother I'd once known. I'm sorry, Michael. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am. You're right, I said, standing up. It doesn't mean anything now. Clear out your office by the end of the day. Maria will help you with the paperwork for the share transfer. As he reached the door, he paused. What happens now? Now? I smiled, running my hand along the smooth wood of our father's desk. Now I do what I should have been doing for the past 15 years, running this company the way Dad taught us to. After Nathan left, Maria came in with more documents requiring my signature. The lawyers confirm everything's in order. The share transfer will be complete by end of business today. I nodded, looking around the office. Dad's old photos were still on the walls, including one of Nathan and me at our college graduations, standing on either side of him, all of us smiling. Should I take those down? Maria asked, following my gaze. No, I said after a moment. Leave them. They're a good reminder. Of what? That success isn't just about making money or having power. It's about doing things right. Dad taught us that, even if Nathan never learned it. Over the next few months, I implemented the changes I'd planned during my years in prison. The old equipment was replaced, employee benefits were improved, and morale began to rise. The Maxwell Manufacturing contract, now secured with Pierce Industries, brought in steady revenue that allowed for further improvements. Nathan kept his word, staying away from the company except for required board meetings. I heard through the grapevine that he'd started drinking heavily, but I couldn't bring myself to care. 15 years in prison had taught me that everyone's choices have consequences. 1 year to the day after taking control of Pierce Industries, I sat in Dad's old office, reviewing the latest quarterly reports. The company was thriving, its stock price higher than ever. The board members who'd once doubted me now sang my praises. Maria knocked on the door, carrying a familiar-looking envelope. This came for you. It was an invitation to the annual Industry Leadership Awards. Pierce Industries was being honored for its remarkable turnaround and innovative business practices. Will you accept in person? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. Nathan would be there. These events were still part of his social circle. He would have to watch as I accepted an award for saving the company he'd nearly destroyed. Yes, I said finally. I think Dad would have wanted me to. The night of the award ceremony, I stood at the podium, looking out over the crowd. Nathan sat at a back table, alone, nursing a drink. Our eyes met briefly as I began my speech. 15 years ago, I learned a valuable lesson about business and life. I said into the microphone. Success isn't about taking what you want. It's about earning what you deserve. I saw Nathan flinch, but I continued. My father built Pierce Industries on 3 principles: integrity, innovation, and perseverance. Today, we honor those principles by continuing his legacy. As applause filled the room, I felt a sense of completion. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. I had reclaimed not just the company, but my father's legacy. And I'd done it the right way, the way he taught us. That night, as I placed the award on my desk next to Dad's old photos, I thought about something he used to say. Success is sweetest when it's earned honestly. I'd earned this, every bit of it. And somewhere, I hoped Dad was proud.